It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood, from coast to coast, and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. For 4 years, Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has been bringing you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thanks for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Today's guest, Micki McWade, author of the book Getting Up, Getting Over, Getting On, a 12-step guide to divorce recovery, says that divorce can be a gateway to a new life once we stop seeing ourselves as a victim. Micki is a clinical social worker, an individual and group psychotherapist, and a divorce coach that works to help people divorce with dignity. She develops, facilitates, and supervises 12-step divorce recovery groups and teaches parenting through divorce classes. Micki is also the author of Daily Meditations for Surviving a Breakup, Separation or Divorce, and Healing You, Healing Me, a divorce group's leader guide. Micki, the topic of divorce, unfortunately, it impacts so many people today, and it has the potential to shatter lives. In your book, you use an example that I believe really illustrates what happens after a divorce, and I love the fact that you equate divorce to having a leg amputated. For me, that gives a visual, and it's something that I can understand. And when you speak about this amputation, you say that we're in pain and we miss it terribly, even though it may have hurt a great deal before the amputation. Now we're off balance, and then you go on to say that our first impulse may be to grab a new leg and make it work without any compatibility test or size consideration or waiting for healing to take place. You say this is because we panic. We believe we can't make it with just one leg. We try to hide the wound and act normal. We tell ourselves, I'm okay, I'll be fine. We do anything to make the feeling of loss go away. You then say that the problem is that we probably won't pick the right replacement and later we'll face rejection. The healing is superficial and the infection from the first wound may undermine the new attachment. I like this image because it's really a part of us that is gone, and it's so important for us to heal. And one thing I was really amazed in your book, you wrote that it takes on average 1 year for every 5 years of marriage or a serious relationship for us to heal. So in your book, Getting Up, Getting Over, Getting On, you talk about a 12-step divorce recovery program, which is modeled after Alcoholics Anonymous. Why did you select a 12-step program after AA when we're not really dealing with an addiction?
Well, that's a very good question, Joan, and something I've been asked often. But in fact, it is very similar in that an addiction is something that is central in our lives very often. If someone is really addicted to alcohol or gambling or lots of other things, could be included in this, a relationship is also central in our lives. And when the relationship falls apart, it really rocks the bedrock of our daily life. And it takes a while for it to be reconstructed over time. So the 12-step programs are simple programs, not easy, but simple steps to follow that help us heal. In the amputation analogy that you just quoted, the time necessary to heal by ourselves and know who we are before going to a quick fix solution of another relationship is critical for us at that juncture. To realize that to know ourselves and to see what we're all about right now is the most important feature. However, many people try to hook themselves up with someone else very quickly to make it go away.
And is it important to follow this 12-step program also because when you do have a breakup like this, we do exhibit obsessive behavior?
Indeed. Obsessive behavior is common because of the fear. Divorce creates a lot of fear for both parties. Whether you're the initiator or the non-initiator, there's a big change that happens. And so people become afraid and they overthink things. They, tend to blame the other person and not look at their own behavior. There are usually multiple reasons for a marriage breaking up, so that A 12-step program really is based on three powerful principles. The first one is we're powerless over other people. We can't really, no matter how we may rationalize or justify what we need to do and how that other person needs to change, we can't change anyone else. It's just not possible. The 12-step program also brings in the concept of spirituality, a higher power, which is very broadly defined, and but it brings comfort to those who can connect to those principles. And then also the principle of self-examination and looking at what works for us and what we need more of and what doesn't work for us and what we'd like to let go of. Those are the three ideas in the 12-step program, of all of them, regardless of what it's about. But essentially, it's really reconstructing your life without something major, whether it's an addiction, alcohol, pornography, gambling, etc. That's one avenue, or with someone that we've built a life with, and we no longer have that person in our lives. In both situations, we have to reconstruct a whole new model for ourselves in order to move forward.
And Micki, we're talking about divorce and loss, but also as you were mentioning those 3 points, being powerless over other people, spirituality in our lives, and self-examination of our life, it seems to me that those are principles and strategies that we should employ in all of our interpersonal relationships.
That's very true, Joan. I think that a lot of people who belong to a 12-step group, whether it's a divorce group or AA or Al-Anon or any of the others, I've heard people say that they appreciate the struggle they went through when they found the steps, because the steps actually do create a better life. It's following a very healthy model. So the application of these 12 steps are really for life as a blueprint for living. It's something that's very solid. And it doesn't really matter what your circumstances are, if they can be improved by the application of the steps. But particularly in times of transition, when you need something to hold on to, you need some kind of guideline.
Let's go through these 12 steps. So what is the first step in recovery?
This is the most important one, in a way. We admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. And what that means briefly is the more we focus on other people, the less together we'll be. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, the more I focus on something outside myself, the less progress I'm going to make, because my power lies in myself. The changes I can make for me and for my children should be my focus, rather than that dirty rat, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's better to be focusing on your own strength.
That's when we spend all of those hours replaying everything and having anger and resentment toward the other person, rather than working on ourselves and realizing that we couldn't change that person.
That's right. It's a mistake that many of us make for too long a period of time. And a certain amount of focus and evaluation is normal, and naturally people are going to do that. But I advise people that as soon as they realize they're doing that, to bring the focus back to themselves and what can they do to make their own life better and their children's lives better.
What is our second step?
Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to wholeness. Now, some people say use God. Some use their own spiritual tradition. Other people, who are more New Age inclined might talk about the universe. Others use the power of the group that they belong to, a support group, or some other spiritual advisor they may have. That the main thing is not to be our own higher power, to be open to information and guidance from other sources other than our own. And for some people, that's a very gradual transition into spirituality. But most people who adapt some form of spirituality feel better.
Okay, so we have a belief in a higher power, which then leads us to the third step, which is?
We make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. And this is it's the hardest step for some people who don't have a spiritual background. But I would say that if you cannot go along with it, just give it time. And it's not necessary to have a strong belief when you start a program in the 12 steps. But the idea is to turn over our issues and ask for help and guidance.
Okay, so we admit we're powerless. We believe in a higher power. We turn it over to the higher power. And then what is the fourth step?
The fourth step is to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And that is, as I said before, a way to look at our lives to decide whether or not things are working for us or not, to really have a good look at ourselves. It's not meant to beat up on ourselves. That's not what it's about. It's really an evaluation of what do I like about myself, what don't I like about myself, what are the changes I'd like to create for the future, and work on the things that you want to change.
So, Micki, we make this inventory, and then what do we have to do?
The fifth step is to admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our failings. Because once you start admitting, when you admit to God, we're forgiven. When we admit to ourselves, we take responsibility. And when we admit to another human being, we realize that we are not alone, that plenty of people have the same faults we do. But to air it out with someone is really very important. We want to admit to our friends or to a safe person generally that we have this issue and we're working on it. It really makes it more real and more conscious.
So as you said, in the fifth step, we admit that we have these failings, and then the sixth and the seventh steps follow that, and those are?
We become entirely ready to have God remove our defects of character, and 7 is ask God to remove them. So becoming ready is the next step. Once I realize what my faults are, do I really want to give them up? Am I really ready to do that? And then once I am, ask God to remove our defects of character. And then the 8th step comes for the first time out of the 12. The 8th step asks us to think about other people that our behavior may have harmed. And that may be a relationship with our ex-husband. It could be, if we're talking about to our children about our ex-husband, including them too much in adult issues. We may not be very present for the children's grandparents, for example. There are ways that we can improve. There are always ways that we can improve. So this step asks that we make a list of the persons we had harmed and became willing, having the willingness to make amends. And then 9 is to actually make those amends to such people, but it's a step-by-step process, as you can see. Then 10, we continue to do this inventory. We think about our behavior and continue to make amends when necessary. And then 11 is thought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So we seek help, we meditate, we listen for the answers, and we continue to evaluate. And then 12 is having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all our affairs. And this is actually, the 12th step was why I wrote this book, because I found that the 12-step program was so helpful to me in getting through my own divorce. I have 4 children who are now adults, but at the time, I really was seeking a way to divorce without doing serious damage to my children to the best of my ability. And following these ideas really helped me. So I then wanted to share it with people in my group, my support group, and then also through that, I was asked for help to start other support groups, and this whole thing came out of step 12.
Is it possible for us to experience divorce and move through this transition and have little harm on our children?
I don't think it's possible to have no impact on the children, but from my experience working with hundreds and hundreds of people now going through divorce, I see that people can either have minimal damage or severe damage. It depends on how it's handled. Kids heal. Kids do heal and get through it, provided their parents behave. A lot of the damage done to children is done unwittingly by parents thinking they're doing the right thing or not thinking. So it's important for parents to get information about what's good for children and what's not good for children. But mostly, and that's what this book is about and the 12-step divorce program is about, is monitoring our own behavior. That is the single, I think, best indicator of whether the kids are going to have a hard time afterwards or not, is whether I behave and do the right thing for them, rather than acting unconsciously and saying things that don't benefit them or being very low in depression and not being available for them and so forth. So self-examination for divorcing people, I believe, is really very important for themselves and for their children.
Micki, before we run out of time, how important is it to select the right support group? Often people say they don't want to go because they don't want to just sit around and complain and bring each other down. So how do we know where to find the right support group that'll meet our needs?
Well, I think you can't tell until you try a group for a few times. It's very hard to tell in the first time you go. It might feel very awkward just because you're in a support group at all. But it's good to go 3-4 times just to see if it changes over weeks. But I think one of the best things is to be in a group with a positive focus about moving forward. It's not focused on strictly complaining. And that's why I like this program particularly, because it does actually focus people on their own behavior and what they want to do from now on, as opposed to, poor me, my life is terrible and I'm so depressed. Because then people leave the meeting feeling more depressed than when they walk in.
Right.
So it's important to try a meeting more than once, though, to see if it changes.
The book is Getting Up, Getting Over, Getting On, a 12-Step Guide to Divorce Recovery by Micki McWade. Micki, in 30 seconds or less, what tips can you offer our listeners to help them learn how to trust and open up their heart again after an experience like this?
I think they need to give themselves time, first of all. It takes time to heal and get over things. Women tend to take more time than men do. And be with supportive people. Be with people who can help you look at yourself in a positive light and avoid people who are critical. That's what I would say at first. And it takes time. Just be patient.
Micki, thank you so much for spending time with us. This is such a difficult and often gut-wrenching topic, and I think that the information you provided here today will really be able to help people get through this difficult time in their lives. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Joan. This has been a good interview. Thanks very much.
We'll be right back. It's time for this week's Medical Minutes. Joining me today is Dr. Michael Gross, the Medical Director of the Active Center for Health and Wellness, the founder of Active Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, and the Chief of Sports Medicine at Hackensack University Medical Center in Hackensack, New Jersey. Dr. Gross is the author of the new book, Get Well Soon. Welcome, Dr. Gross. Thanks for joining us today.
Joan, as always, it's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Gross, winter is here, the temperatures outside are dropping, and people are still outside exercising and taking part in winter activities. What happens to the body when exercising outdoors in cold weather, and what are some things that we really need to be mindful of?
Well, I think, simply put, what happens to the body when you're outside exercising in cold weather is you get cold. And that has a certain number of effects on the body, and there are certain ways to avoid that. Unless you want to begin exercising by running at the mall in the morning or running on a treadmill indoors all winter, there are certain precautions that you have to take if you're going to exercise outside. Number one, the majority of your body heat is lost through your head. So it's very important to wear a hat. A ski cap or a simple hat will prevent a great deal of heat loss through the top of your head, and that's an important addition to your workout gear if you're exercising outside in the cold weather. Gloves are also important because the second place where you lose a lot of body heat is through your hands and fingers, because that's where there's the most blood flow, in the head, in the scalp, and in the hands and fingers. So a light pair of gloves is very important. It's also important to dress in layers so that your sweat can evaporate off your body and wick out through the various layers, the same way you would if you were going out skiing or performing any sort of activity outside. You're much better, you're much more insulated if you're wearing layers, not just one heavy coat.
Doctor, exercising in cold weather, are there special warm-up exercises that we should do, or can we follow our regular, even warmer weather regimen?
I think it's important to stretch before you go out in the cold weather, to spend a little time getting your body warm so that you go out. People tend to be a little stiffer. It's never been shown scientifically that you're stiffer and get more injuries, but we sort of know intuitively that if you're going to go out in the cold weather and you warm up beforehand, you'll feel better, you'll perform better, and you'll be able to get through your workout with a little bit more enjoyment.
What about dehydration? We tend to think of that in the warm weather, but is it possible to become dehydrated in the cold weather?
Joan, that's a great question. People seem to think for some reason because it's cold they're not sweating. And you can sweat tremendously by exercising in the cold weather, particularly if you're dressed well. So it's very important to keep your fluid levels up while you're exercising. And always to remember, if you wait until you're thirsty to drink water, you've waited too long, because that means you're already dehydrated. So it's important to keep your fluid levels up both before you exercise and while you're exercising.
As a sports medicine physician, are there specific injuries that you tend to see more of in the wintertime?
Well, obviously, we see a lot of slip and fall injuries. People fall on the ice, and they can fall, and they can break their wrist. They can fracture any bone. So anything that you can hurt on a slip and fall, we see. We see pulled muscles from people who are overexerting themselves. But it's sort of interesting that we see really the same injuries year-round. People are doing the same things. They may not be as careful when the weather's cold. I think it's very important that if you're going to be exercising in the wintertime, and really even in the summertime, it's important to know what sort of weather you're going to be encountering when you get outdoors. So watching the weather report, knowing how hot it is, knowing how cold it is, knowing the humidity, those are all important factors to help you avoid injuries and to dress appropriately, to exercise appropriately when you're going to be outdoors.
For more information about this topic or to learn how to live a more active lifestyle, you can visit Dr. Gross's site, activeorthopedics.com, and to learn how to achieve true wellness in your life, get a copy of his new book, Get Well Soon. It's available on Amazon.com. Dr. Gross, thank you so much for spending time with us today. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Joan, thank you as always for inviting me.
Do you suffer from migraine headaches? According to several studies, at least 21 million U.S. women and 7 million U.S. men over the age of 12 have reported having migraines. About 90% of migraine sufferers have family history of the condition. But could the foods you choose to eat or avoid lessen both the number and severity of these events? Hi, I'm Carrie Kelly, registered dietitian at the Active Center for Health and Wellness in Hackensack, New Jersey. There actually are quite a few potential migraine triggers related to food. For example, tyramine, a substance formed by the breakdown of proteins as foods age, is often associated with the development of a migraine headache. Tyramine is naturally found in aged cheeses, fava beans, pickles, and canned soups. As a general rule, the longer a high-protein food is aged, the higher the concentration of tyramine. So cured, processed meats like hard salamis and dried sausages are perfect examples of this. In addition, specific food additives, such as nitrates, commonly found in processed deli meats, have also been associated with migraines. Monosodium glutamate, which is commonly used as a flavor enhancer in processed foods like snack chips and packaged seasoned rice mixes, is also guilty of triggering these types of headaches. If you're one of the millions of migraine sufferers, it may be a good idea to try an elimination diet. Specifically remove common migraine triggers from your daily intake, and then take notice of how your body reacts. Are you having less headaches? Is the pain less severe? If so, there is a good chance you have been experiencing negative reactions to some of these aforementioned dietary triggers. For more information, visit us on the web at theactivecenter.com.
We all want to live a happy, productive life, but sometimes we just need a little help. Our Coach on Call experts provide strategies to help you live your best life now. Joining me today is Karen Chow, an author, media personality, CEO, and founder of Flight My Fire, the aviation-inspired company that mentors women to fly and live outside their limits where personal freedom resides. Karen describes herself as your co-pilot to destination freedom. Welcome, Karen. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me once again, Joan.
Karen, I want to talk to you today a little bit about our purpose versus our calling. I hear the word purpose a lot today, and people use it in the context of what's your purpose or what's your why. Why do you think the word purpose is so often used today?
Well, I think people are becoming a lot more open to living their life with more meaning. So they look for a sense of purpose. In the context of business, you hear the word purpose intertwined with passion a lot, which is taken as a recipe for success.
Now, Karen, that being the case, you think if people find what they're passionate about and link it with a purpose, then everything should be perfect in their life. They should be happy.
They should be, right, Joan? I think the expression was created to give business folk, entrepreneurs in particular, a framework to follow, upon which to build their foundation.
What about finding your why? Does that differ from finding your purpose?
Finding your purpose focuses more on the nature of making a difference and giving back to the community, to the world, towards a cause. Finding a why is more personal. For example, if you have a big family to support or a giant mortgage to pay off, or if you want to pay the medical bills, or simply travel around the globe.
So, Karen, why then do you think people don't reach their goals in business or find happiness in their life?
There has to be a stronger pull. For instance, let's take the word purpose. If you think back to Joan's experiences you've had in your past, which at the time they happened, you didn't have an answer for. We all have this, right? So let's say in particular the perceived negative experiences. You look at them now and you say to yourself, oh, now I see it. So you realize now there's a purpose for everything. But hindsight being 2020, it's certainly not something you would have predicted or wished for. So the cycle will repeat itself over and over again. We don't always have the answer, but tomorrow we will. So while finding or having a purpose as a point of reference, it doesn't necessarily guarantee success. In fact, there's a less chance of that happening.
Karen, do you believe that everyone has a calling? And is there a way for someone to find his or her calling?
Yes, I do. I think you have to listen to the voice and turn a deaf ear to the noise and the fluff. It's not easy, but if you're called to do something, you'll notice it in those moments of stillness and silence and serenity. But you have to first find that sweet spot in yourself that allows you to relax to that degree, whether it's meditation that you use or what have you. And you'll find that divine source, which is where it comes from, it finds the place in your heart, mind, and soul. So you'll feel led rather than driven, and that's really, really important. Otherwise, you'll always be grinding and gunning and trying to make things happen, and that's not always hard. It's a control factor. And, controlling anything, whether it applies to your business, your life, your spouse, your relationship, it's not just stressful and unhealthy. It clouds your judgment and allows you never find your calling or have your calling find you. So I would say pay attention to that divine calling trying to reach you.
Karen, thank you so much for spending time with us today. If our listeners would like to get more information, they can visit KarenChow.com. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that this information is for educational purposes only and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, you can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, take part in the book club, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.